a long time ago, like a lifetime ago, literally, I was young and in love for the very first time. And boy, was I ever stupid. I fell hard for this guy named Joe, and I would have done anything for him. I wanted to make him happy more than I wanted to make myself happy. And unfortunately for me, Joe was Joe. And making him happy was a constant chore. The one thing I knew worked for us as a relationship is if I met him on his own terms. If I wanted to spend time with him, and I wanted to spend time with him, I had to do what he wanted to do. So I left my pride behind and I stepped into my relationship. Now, for our first birthday together, and I mean our first important birthday together, Joe's birthday, I knew I had to get him something good, and I wanted to go all out and make Joe's dream a reality. Now, Joe had always wanted to be an oceanographer, but he'd never gotten beyond watching Shark Week. So I figured the perfect gift would be to get him scuba diving lessons. And since this was going to be a way for us to spend time together, I signed myself up as well. When I gave Joe his present, his first reaction was to smile. He was happy. And his second reaction was to go, "You're going to do this too?" Which was a little bit less happy for me, but yes, we were going to do this together. Now, if you haven't gotten Had-I certified or tried any other kind of scuba certification, the first thing you have to do is take a class. And you sit there in a classroom and you learn how to breathe underwater without hopefully dying. And then you take a written test. And I've always been good at written tests, so I passed right away. And so did Joe. So we got moved on to the next stage of certification, the pool test. We had to go out to this pool in Manassas, and I was a little bit nervous about going there, not only because I had to go to Manassas, but also, it was when I got to the pool that it kind of hit me, I can't swim. Yeah, I never learned how. I just doggy paddle. And in order to pass the test, you have to be able to swim 4 laps in an Olympic-sized pool. Yeah, and apparently no one else had a problem with this. Like, everyone there seemed to know how to swim. I guess people who want to scuba dive think about these things. So we all got in the pool and started doing our laps, and seriously, everyone was done like 20 minutes before me, because apparently doggy paddling is not all that efficient. But as I finished my final 4 laps, I got out of the pool, and Joe was kind of rolling his eyes in embarrassment, and I just felt proud. I mean, I had done it. I didn't think I could. And we passed at the pool, and they sent us on to the final stage of certification, open water. Yeah, now I didn't really put much thought into, well, obviously any of this. But when we got to Florida, where we were doing our open water, and on the morning of our open water dive, I kind of stood on the dock looking out at the boat, and really, worse than that, looking out at the water. There was water everywhere. And that's when it hit me. I am terrified of water. I mean, I took a shower this morning. I can handle a jacuzzi just fine, but open water, the kind you can't see the end of, that's another story. You see, I grew up at the shore. For those of you not from New Jersey, that's the beach. And one of my earliest memories is of my mom warning me about this monster called the Undertow. And she told me that if I went in over my ankles, the Undertow would grab me, suck me under, and drag me out to Mexico. And at first I thought she was kidding, but then I did go in over my ankles, and I got dragged under and almost drowned. The next summer, same thing happened. We had a really good Undertow in New Jersey. So by the time I was 5, I realized if you want to live, you do not go in over your ankles. So I'm standing on this dock, and I turn to Joe, and I explain to him about the undertow and the ankles, and he just says, why do you have to ruin everything for me? You know I need a buddy to dive with. And it was true. They wanted you to have a buddy with you, and this was for Joe, the love of my life. And so I was determined not to let him go. And I let him down, and I got on that boat. And then that boat started heading out into the middle of the ocean, and nobody else seemed to have a problem with that. What is wrong with these people? But about 2 minutes into the boat ride, I remembered the other reason I hadn't been on a boat in like 20 years. I get seasick. Yeah, really easily. Now, the scuba instructor saw me turning green. Joe, at this point, was trying to distance himself from me, and the scuba instructor was he was this really zen guy, and he gave me Dramamine, which for those of you who do not suffer the way I do, it does not kick in right away. It takes a while. So the scuba guy said, you know what? Look out at the horizon. Find a place that isn't moving and focus on it. That is much easier to say than to do, because no, every part of the horizon was swaying back and forth, and I was getting sicker and sicker. And so when we finally did drop anchor, I was determined to be one of the first people off the boat and into the water, because I knew when I got into the water, the swaying would stop. Yeah, what was good about it was that this lurching feeling in my stomach was distracting me from the fact that I was going to die. We all got geared up, and the instructors got in the water, and then I finally got in the water, and guess what? The swaying doesn't stop. But now the waves are over your head, and you can't focus on the horizon, and you're in way over your ankles. I did the only practical thing. I flipped out. I panicked. I started doggy paddling as fast as I could, trying to get back onto the boat. The scuba instructor grabbed my tank and turned me around. Okay. I tried to calm down, think about Joe, you're doing this for him. The scuba instructor was waiting for my answer. I was gonna say yes, but decided to be absolutely clear and just vomit instead. We watched my vomit wash out to Mexico, and then the instructor repeated, okay. I looked around for Joe, but he hadn't waited. He'd descended with the other students. This was all down to me. I was already in the water, so I just said, yeah. The instructor said, it will be calmer below. I said, great. He said, okay again, and I said, okay. And then he smiled reassuringly and said, if you have to throw up while we're down there, make sure you blow it through your mouthpiece or you'll run out of air. And then he left me. I decided it would be a good idea to rinse my mouth out, try to get the taste out before I had to be underwater. But apparently diesel kind of floats around a boat. Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, diesel also makes you throw up. So I watched my vomit wash out to Mexico. And for those of you who think that watching your vomit wash out to Mexico twice in one day is really cool, then you have got to try scuba diving with vomit and oil in your mouth. There is nothing quite like every breath you take being flavored by oily chunks. But you know what? It was And it was beautiful and peaceful. And even though there were other people down there, I felt like I was alone with myself and so proud of myself for being there. When we got back to our hotel room, I was shaking from the nausea and the seasickness that doesn't leave you right away. And I curled up in our bed and I just tried to make the nausea and the swaying stop. Joe left us for a little while, left the room for a little while, and when he came back, he was filled with excitement. He said, "They have a night dive." And I just moaned, and then he said, "We are totally doing it." And that's when I put my foot down and just said no. It took me a long time to put my other foot down, but eventually I did. And I put one foot in front of the other and walked out the door. I took with me my newly found pride and my Pad-Eye certification.